Hey, did you know that over 60% of Americans listen to podcasts regularly? I mean, imagine joining this booming trend this very year. That's what this video is all about. And what you're going to learn is how to start your own podcast this year, covering everything from planning to launching. You know, many aspiring podcasters or experts, they struggle on where to begin, how to stand out from the crowd, and what is going to make them different than everybody else. And sometimes that could be a little daunting. It reminds me of the crazy times when I was thinking and contemplating about starting my own podcast, and I was staying stuck for a long period of time wondering, what am I going to talk about? What's the name of it going to be? You know, what are all the topics I'm going to discuss? It was just overwhelming. It wasn't until I decided to just do it, like just say, I'm going to hit record and I'm going to get this thing launched. And I remember the first 10 podcast episodes that I ever recorded was right from my mobile phone, like no joke. I literally took out my phone, I opened up voice memo, and I was recording. First I was looking for my earbuds, but first I started with my phone, and then I would plug in some earbuds and I'd talk into the microphone. And then from there, I added on a different microphone and made the sound even better. But for the first 10 episodes, you literally could hear like cars honking in the background. I mean, I was doing it from outside from a cafe because I wanted to get it into my head that I didn't need anything else. I didn't need to have like a studio or lighting or an amazing microphone. What I wanted to have was simply the end result. I wanted to have the show. I wanted to have the episode. I wanted to have the transformation. I wanted to hear people say, this is super helpful. Thank you so much, Nathan. This has changed my life. And you know, that was many years ago. My podcast is still out there, and I've always contemplated, should I relaunch? Should I probably, get more episodes out there? People asking me, hey, we're still waiting for your episodes. And you know what? I probably will. I'll probably end up getting re-engaged in that and focusing on clarity, confidence, and cash flow specifically, and providing more value to the marketplace. And that's something that's very important, is you have to understand and know what is first who your audience is and what problem you're solving. Like, who is going to listen to you? What is the biggest problem they're having? Now, this is very different if you are, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say Tucker Carlson, okay, or Megyn Kelly, and there's many others, okay? There's many others, but I'm just thinking of these two recent individuals who were known in the media, the mass media. Or I think Don Lemon actually also came out with one recently too. So who were in the mass media, well known from their networks, and then branched off and started their own podcast. They took a crowd with them. They took an audience with them. People liked them for many years and followed them, and that's how they built their audience. And from there, as they were able to speak their own mind, their beliefs, their opinions, and add their journalism expertise to that, they built their own audience, and they're doing very well. They're probably doing better now than they were before, and they have more freedom. And that's exactly what I was referring to earlier, is one way you can do it. You're not really solving a problem. You're more about being, sharing the news. So if that's not you, that's okay. It's actually not really I don't find it very fun anyway, just reporting the news. Because one, to attract people, you have to oftentimes share a lot of bad things, shock and awe things, negative things to entice someone to pay attention from a news perspective. So that's not something I really enjoy. However, what I do enjoy, and over the years when I've helped experts launch a podcast, we have to still focus on the audience. We have to focus on what problem or challenge are we solving, because that's why people are listening. Even if it's, let's say, a mystery podcast, even if it's a murder podcast, what is someone wanting out of that podcast? Do they want mystery? Do they want horror? What are you satisfying within the audience to get them to listen? Okay, that's really important. Once you have that refined, once you have that dialed in, you know exactly who it is, then that will be like 75% of the battle. The rest of the 25% will come so much easier. And this comes with this whole metric, and how you find this out is, for example, the formula that I created called the magic formula. Yeah, I dubbed it the magic formula because it helps aspiring experts to clearly identify not just who their audience is, but more deeper than that, what problem they're going to solve, what course do they have, what's their solution, and it goes even into niching. And so once you have that clarity, then it will become more clear to you on what direction you're going to go and the topics you're going to discuss. The topics get so much easier. Like once you get clear on this part, what I call the magic formula, getting the topics is so much easier. I can show you a quick like AI prompt you can pull up, and it pulls up all the current trending questions that people are asking, and you just create topics to solve that problem. So that's like later on. However, right now, actually what you could do in the description, you can click on the link and get and download the magic formula document that I use with my clients, my private clients, and helping them craft that, even if they've launched already, but it works even if you haven't launched yet, even if you haven't started and you're starting to build like a coaching program or a training, a course, even a book that will help you identify that individual much more clearly. And one last thing on this topic, and then we'll continue. If the way to get to build that audience really quickly, and I've shared this in other videos, but one of the things to imagine quickly is get so clear on who that person is, their age range, male or female, what type of lifestyle to live. If you can understand the income bracket, where do they go? I like to use the cafe segmentation. So typically, and as an example, some people are attracted to Starbucks and some people are attracted to Dunkin' Donuts and some are attracted to Krispy Kreme, but let's just use two. So you have a Starbucks client and a Dunkin' Donuts client. And those are two types of individuals, right? They each go to those locations for different reasons and beliefs and problems that are being solved. So those are demographics. You have to understand those demographics of the individual. And once you're clear on that individual, then you can build and shape from there. Okay. So get the magic formula. It will really help you get clarity on that. So let that be a good clarity exercise for you. So once you go through that process, you can then find your niche. In your niche, and I always remember the saying, there's riches in the niches. Once you identify your niche and that audience, guess what? It's going to open up the doors for you. Everything's going to get a lot easier about understanding your audience. The other elements about logistics is what I like to call it, right? Logistics is, okay, do I use my phone? Do I use this microphone, like this microphone here? Do I, how do I set this up? Should I have lighting? Should I do the 2C interview, podcast? Should I, right? All those things, it can be overwhelming to decide. Here's what you need to understand is what type of lifestyle do you live? Do you live a stationary lifestyle, meaning you live in a certain area, you don't travel so much, and you're able to visit the location. Maybe it's an office, maybe it's in your home, and you're able to do this podcast on a weekly basis. If you're a traveling expert entrepreneur, then you're going to have a different setup. You're going to need an entirely different setup, more mobile podcasting setup. So there's two different things, two different paths. What you don't want to do is let all that overwhelm you. What I encourage you to do is right now, start with what you have. And if literally all you have is your mobile phone, you take out voice recorder and you start your first topic, okay? You start your first topic and you record a podcast. Let it at least be 10 minutes long, at least. Start with 10 minutes. Don't go less than that. Start with 10 minutes, and if it goes to 15 to 30, that's fine. But start with 10. And then let it continue from there. Okay. So just remember that these little steps, these little hurdles are the beginning starting points. They're not everything. Some of your key moments are going to be not just content, it's going to be marketing. Okay. Because you can have a podcast where there's no marketing done and it doesn't go very far. Similar to my podcast. I'll give you an example. Very niched, very specific market. People who have heard me speak, who know me from maybe different groups or other interviews I've been on. Typically those people who would, register or subscribe to the podcast. However, if you put some fuel behind that, for example, I've worked with a lot of experts where we would set up a system of getting interviewed. So being interviewed on other people's podcasts has a lot of power, because when you're interviewed on someone else's podcast, now you're tapping into their audience. You're now becoming known through someone else's audience. So if they have an audience of 100,000, 500,000, 1 million people, then guess what? You just got exposed to that audience, which is probably close and similar to your audience, maybe in the same niche. Okay. So that's a good way to use borrowed credibility, borrowed partnerships, where you're actually, let's call it a borrowed audience, for example. Okay. So that really helps. That can be a really big tipping point. Or you can spend money and push the podcast out there with an ad budget, a podcast budget. However, I don't recommend that in the beginning, because in the beginning, you're going to want to get past your 50 episodes, okay? Your 100 episodes. You're going to want to get the flow of your vision, mission, your brand voice. You're going to want to get that out there. And that takes time. That takes time and practice, okay? So that you delivering your message and sharing the topics and your experiences is not going to happen on the first episode. It's not going to happen on the 10th episode. You're looking at 50 and above, 100 and above. That's where you really start getting a flow of things. So did you hear me straight? You have to get past like 100 episodes, 100 videos, whether it's a video podcast or an audio podcast. You have to get past the 100 mark so that you can have more clarity and confidence in the process. Okay. It's really important. That's probably one of the most important things. You can talk about equipment and quality and all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, it's just hitting record and getting it done. And if I was to leave you with one last conclusionary tip about the whole setup, because I know sometimes it might be the most daunting part and how it looks and feels and all that stuff, I will tell you this. One piece of recommendation before you go buy a whole studio and all that stuff, and if you just do an audio, that would be great. However, I'll tell you the most important thing about podcasting is audio. So invest in good audio, meaning your microphone, okay? There are very affordable microphones for less than $200 that will give you a great sound. If you want to go a little bit higher, well, let me just rewind here. So let's say under $200, you can get a USB plugin, USB-C plugin right into your computer, hit record, and there you go, good sound. If you want to take it a step higher, you can get a different style microphone, what's called XLR, and an audio adapter. I forgot the name of it just now. But what was it, amplifier? I forget the name of it. But you get that equipment. You could tell I don't use it, right? I don't even have one. So that's why I don't remember the name. You get one of those adapters and plug it into XLR into that adapter. And then it goes to your computer. Okay. But to keep that simple, to keep it super simple, if you just plug in direct to your computer, or if you record on your phone and then transfer the file, that's very okay. Just make sure the microphone is good. It doesn't have to be more than $200. What I don't recommend you to do is do not get a cheap microphone of $20, okay? Because that audio quality is going to be super important to what people are listening to. Remember, podcasting is primarily listening. Even though if you have a video podcast, okay, even if it's video, people may hit play and walk away and still be listening to you, or they put you down in the car and your video may be playing, but the reality is they're just listening. Okay, so just keep in mind. Now, to recap all this, again, starting a podcast, most importantly this year, one involves choosing your topic, investing in a good microphone, and most importantly, promoting your podcast. Promoting your podcast, we'll cover that in a different video, but just getting started is going to really get you launched and out there and get more exposure to your podcast. Now, if you found this helpful, what you can do is check out my video podcasting strategies in that playlist. And also you can click on the link to get the magic formula to help you get clarity on maybe your niche, your audience, and who you're going to help and serve in your mission. All right. Thanks so much. And I'll see you in the next video.